Namaskar viewers, hello and welcome to Sansad TV. I am Teena Jha. You're watching the global debate. On the show today, we're going to talk about ChatGPT that's been buzzing around the technology world for a while now. In just over 2 months of being launched, the AI-backed chatbot has become a go-to tool for its ability to generate human-like responses. It can write eloquent essays and poems, answer questions, follow-up questions, also admit mistakes, challenge incorrect premises, and even reject inappropriate requests. What makes it different from other chatbots and search engines is that it is generative, conversational, provides human-like responses, and is more prompt and engaging. Reasons why its popularity has grown so much in such less time. But at the same time, there have also been rapid concerns over ChatGPT and its implications, due to which its usage has been banned at several places, especially at educational institutions in several countries. So today, with eminent experts, we'll analyze the merits and limitations of ChatGPT on this edition of the Global Debate. Delighted to have with us on the program today an illustrious panel of experts. Let me begin by introducing them to you. Welcome on the program, Professor Jonathan H. Choi, Solly Robbins Faculty Research Scholar. He is also Associate Professor of Law, University of Minnesota. Professor Choi, welcome to the program and thank you very much for your time. Dr. Pushpak Bhattacharya, he is Professor, Computer Science and Engineering Department, Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay. Dr. Huzur Saran, Professor in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering, Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi. He is also the coordinator of the Center of Excellence in Cybersecurity at IIT Delhi. Thank you, gentlemen, and welcome both professors as well on this edition of the Global Debate. Professor Bhattacharya, let me begin the program today with you, with your views on ChatGPT. You know, just 2 months of being in existence and ChatGPT has taken over the technology world. Have you used the technology? Are you amazed by it? Or as a professor, are you terrified with the kind of implications it could have on the future of students?
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for having me in this program. Delighted to talk about almost a revolutionary development in natural language processing machine learning, which has been my field of work for last 25 to 30 years. Now, I am a researcher who has seen, 3 generations of NLP, the so-called 3 generations of NLP, rule-based systems, then statistical machine learning systems, and now deep learning systems. Now, deep learning systems, of course, succeed by virtue of being trained on huge amount of data. And the principle, at least, fundamentally is very simple. The machine associates probabilistically different situations. To give you an example, if I ask, this movie is very nice, what is the sentiment contained in this sentence? The machine should come back and say that the sentiment is positive. Now, the machine by itself doesn't understand the concept of movie. I mean, quote unquote, doesn't understand the concept of movie, the positive sentiment, and so on. All it has seen before is that wherever the words like nice, amazing, etc. occur, the sentiment happens to be labeled as positive. So it creates this association probabilistically, and it has seen huge amount of such data, and therefore these kind of probabilistic associations become extremely accurate. So now ChatGPT has exploited huge amount of data and this probabilistic modeling to the best of its ability and opportunity, and therefore it is doing amazing things. As a researcher, I am really delighted by this development because natural language processing has become a very serious business, and people are taking note of it from every field. Wherever there is an interaction with a machine, natural language processing is playing a role, and ChatGPT has epitomized the success of the field. I'm delighted.
Okay, Professor Saran, Professor Bhattacharya is delighted. The youngsters, particularly in India, also are amazed by the range of things that it can do and at such lightning speed. But as a professor, how do you look at this technology? The fact that it does a lot of things like humans, but can it replace human intelligence?
So again, the question is, not all human intelligence, but certain kinds of activity, especially things which are routine. Like, for example, the intent of ChatGPT and things like this, conversational AIs are, for example, to help automate the customer service job. So you call some company up, and right now they take you through some very complicated interface because humans are expensive, so they don't let you talk to a human right away, right? So they take you through some very messy IVR system, or they have these chatbots on their website where most of the time you ask the question, the answer the chatbot was not able to really give a good job of. So things like ChatGPT are trying to address that by being able to build a much larger database, and as Pushpak said, be able to probabilistically try to understand is very much in quotes. As humans understand things, I don't think we can talk about AI understanding things in that perspective. So it is able to more quickly respond for the average query, right? So in that sense, if you are going to have 10,000 agents, and those 10,000 agents would have to be put earlier for Indian Railways, for all over Indian Railways, for questions, and most of the questions are routine in nature, right? So 80-90% of questions, something like ChatGPT could answer, and the human experience could be almost as good as talking to a human. So in that limited context, it could help. But anything that is a little complicated, a little subtle, right? That is where this will still be a challenge, because as we understand, it is in the end a probabilistic model. It sort of works most of the time, but a little, as Pushpak was saying, if you have 2-3 positive and negative words and they really add up to mean something to a human, it may not mean the same thing to ChatGPT.
Absolutely.
So
there are
the
certain
sentiment,
limitations, you're right. And we will
Right,
discuss that
right.
as well. We will also discuss the kind of concerns that have been raised related to ChatGPT. But before I proceed to Professor Choi, very quickly, Professor Saran, in a country like ours, how popular or how realistic is the idea of adapting to something like this? We need jobs. We have lots of youngsters. In fact, we are the youngest nation today. We need to generate jobs for people. But with technologies like this, which will replace at least the initial, the phase one kind of jobs, which would involve maybe say like the drafting of letters in a lawyer's office, maybe writing emails. So jobs like that, those will this kind of technology replace the humans in these particular roles?
Quite possibly. As we know, automation, both in manufacturing and in IT kind of tasks, routine information processing tasks could be impacted in the longer term, not the 1 or 2 year term, but in the 5 to 10 year term, definitely by many of these kinds of technologies.
Okay. Professor Choi, coming to you for your perspective now. You collaborated with some other researchers in your university on a paper which was called ChatGPT Goes to Law School, and in which you aim to determine how such models could do in a law exam. So tell us and our viewers about what your finding was. Did ChatGPT pass in the exam with flying colors?
Great. So first of all, thank you for having me here. Excited to be here. We tried to use ChatGPT alone without human intervention to generate answers to both multiple choice and essay questions on real law school exams. And then we compared them to real students who were taking those same exams. We graded them blind, so the graders didn't know what answers were generated by ChatGPT and which were answered by real students. What we found was that ChatGPT would have passed all of the exams we tested it on, and assuming it met other requirements, would have been able to pass law school in general, but it would have been at the bottom of the class. So ChatGPT alone would not make a great lawyer, would not make even an okay lawyer. It would be one of the worst lawyers to graduate from Minnesota Law, which is a great law school. But ChatGPT standing alone isn't that strong. Now, of course, the big potential for ChatGPT is to collaborate with humans. So a human can guide the responses from ChatGPT, can edit them for factual errors, can use ChatGPT's production as a first draft and then improve it. That's the real potential that we see, and it has a lot of potential to revolutionize the way that law is practiced by removing some of the most mundane tasks from the lawyer's workload.
Right. So the assertion is that this technology alone can't, bring about the change, but it has to be done with some kind of human support, is what your study says. But Professor Bhattacharya, I'll come back to you on the concerns now, and particularly a lot of academics, a lot of educators across the world have expressed concerns that academic standards could suffer because of this particular technology. So ChatGPT could turn into Cheat GPT. How valid is that concern? And because of which a lot of institutions across the world, in the United States, within India, in France as well, they've banned the use of ChatGPT. Professor Bhattacharya?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, so this is indeed a very valid concern, and this is being discussed extensively in academia, in schools, colleges, everywhere. So one of the interesting possibilities is that pupils who are asked to write essays, and if they take help of, let's say, ChatGPT, then one thing that could be done is that they write the essay. They also get the essay output by ChatGPT, and they're asked to critically examine what is the difference of quality in their own writing and ChatGPT's writing, which we know is the best way to acquire language skills. Mm-hmm. So the concerns that are being expressed are indeed valid. But if you're a little innovative about examining critically ChatGPT's linguistically, construction-wise, phrase-wise, and so on, I think this will lead to increasing language skills.
Professor Saran, how do you look at this concern, and which is being raised not just in one country, but a lot of educators are concerned that this may impact learning outcomes, at least in high school and in colleges also, and it will be difficult for the professors to distinguish what is the brilliance of the child and what actually has been taken from this technology.
So again, I would not say brilliance, but definitely there is a concern, because normally most of the systems are very exam based, and there are standard sets of questions that get asked very often in a typical average examination system. And using ChatGPT, the average or below average student could easily manage to get an above average grade or a little better than average without doing any effort. Now, that's the flip side of it, right? But he will not get any learning from it. And the point is, as you yourself said, if he doesn't learn anything, he will not have jobs tomorrow, right? So today the skill is going to be, right? Today the skill is going to be, yes, you just like you use Google. 10 years ago, there was no Google 20 years ago. And then finding any information was a lot of work, and you had to research involved digging through libraries and trying to find the right papers.
Right.
Today, when Google came along, that went away, right? So you had to apply a higher level of intelligence to figure out which are the right things to look at. Similarly here, when ChatGPT gives you some output, refining it to make it really impactful is where the skill will be. Not at the level, yes, you could get a sort of average level output from ChatGPT, but then can you raise it above the average to something which conveys the intent more effectively? That is where the skill, human skill, will now have to be built up to have value in the marketplace. So the point is, the nature of training, the nature of examination will have to evolve.
Certainly. So this is a challenge for us as well in the times to come. Professor Choi, what are the kind of questions that you found that ChatGPT is doing well in? Because what we understand for the moment is that it's performing extremely well when it comes to essay writing, but not that well when you talk about multiple choice questions, maybe complex mathematical problems. That's first part of the question. And the second part is, because we are talking about how revolutionary a change this is going to be, let me link it to the invention of calculator. So calculator changed the way mathematics was taught. Will ChatGPT change the way writing or creativity will have to change and will have to evolve in the times to come?
Great. So what is ChatGPT good at? In our study, we looked at essays and multiple choice questions. It was better at essays. And within essays, it was better at reciting legal rules. It was worse at spotting legal issues, so identifying potential legal problems. And it was worse at deep analysis. It couldn't do those tasks well compared to students. So when we ask what kinds of skills are going to be the most valuable in a world where ChatGPT is widely available, it's what Professor Saran said. It's the ability to take that output, edit it, recognize when ChatGPT has made a mistake, and to do the deep analysis and apply legal judgment in a way that only humans right now can do. In terms of how legal education should change in response to ChatGPT, it's a question of what skills are going to be rare and valuable now, and that'll be totally different. So before, the encyclopedic knowledge of law would have been a very valuable thing. The ability to recite constitutional law would have been valuable. And now ChatGPT can spit out an answer. You have to check whether the answer is correct, but it can spit out an answer to any constitutional law question. What it can't do is identify the deeper issues. So in terms of the way that tests need to change and legal education needs to change, it needs to go where the skills are most valuable. And just like with the invention of the calculator, before calculators, when people had to do math using a slide rule or by hand, the tests involved a slide rule or involved doing mathematics by hand. But after the invention of the calculator, the way that the tests were done changed because the skills that you needed in real life changed. And that's the way that education will have to evolve.
Okay. Professor Bhattacharya, this was about the concerns that it poses to education and what it may do to the learning outcomes, how maybe students have to be smarter and go back to their, thinking abilities and creativity. But the larger security concerns. So now what's also been cited is that it could be one of the potential sources and a source of large-scale fake information. How valid is that concern in the times to come? Because misinformation and fake news is something that governments across the world are battling against. If this becomes a source of large-scale fake news and misinformation, how will we curb it?
Right.
Professor Bhattacharya, yes.
So let me just make one point regarding the previous question that you asked, that, we all know in various fields like music, like sports, it is a huge help if you observe others performing the same task and at a level which is better than yours, let's say. Okay, so a lot of skill acquisition is by observing others perform the task. So my optimism or happiness at ChatGPT stems from the fact that here there is an opportunity to observe a language generation system at work and whose performance is at a reasonable level. So one can hope to go up to that level by observing ChatGPT's output. And critical examination of any output is always an important stepping stone towards skill acquisition.
Right.
Now coming to, so that was a point. Now coming to your point about security, fake news, etc. We know that offensive text, fake news, rumor, these have been a long-standing problem for quite some time. These are challenges for natural language processing, machine learning, image processing, computer vision for a long time. Now here, of course, I have observed, I have asked many questions to ChatGPT. For example, when I asked ChatGPT information about myself, it made mistake on where I graduated from, okay, what was my basic, which institute granted me the basic degree and so on. So those mistakes happened. Now, at the same time, it also was correct about my field of specialization, etc., etc. Now, it is a mixed pot, and you are right that it's a big concern regarding fake news and so on. We have seen a large concern about language models is they being biased. So the training data, if that is biased, if the hyperparameters are biased, then the model also becomes biased, and it produces text which can be biased and offensive. Now, what to do about this? The way forward seems to be looking at the data very closely. Now, this becomes an unscalable proposition because the data on which the language model is trained is huge, just huge, unimaginably huge. So looking at the data is not a good proposition. So we have to do maybe prompt engineering to the large language models, whereby they are given inputs and told following should be the output, and we keep observing them in various input-output situations. So this will have to be done, just like in a large power setup, nuclear machines, and so on. We have to be careful not to use the machine in a harmful way, and you have to test the machine properly. Now, an age has come where these kind of systems, large language models, require thorough testing.
That's right. So does that mean, Professor Choi, that globally, in order to curb the problem of fake news and misinformation, perhaps we have to develop a new software which will take care of all these aspects, or how do we strengthen the framework to counter fake news, because that's a problem which will persist globally?
Ordinary legal doctrines impose penalties for misinformation in certain cases. The struggle is that now the cost of producing fake news is going to be so low. This might be an area where the market will respond and people will realize that information generally has a high risk of being false if you just find it somewhere random on the internet, and people will become more reliant on trusted sources like yourself, like the New York Times, like any news source that has a reputation for honesty. I think we're already seeing a world where misinformation is rampant and you can't trust random links on Facebook. So it'll become incumbent on aggregators to filter for high quality news, and people will realize that there are only certain sources where they can rely on high quality information.
Right. So it can be an assistive technology, but not something that we can completely depend on. That's an important point. Professor Saran, are there also cybersecurity concerns? And especially because in India, digital revolution has happened at an unprecedented pace. How do you think this could pose a problem when it comes to cybersecurity concerns that we're already dealing with?
Well, as you know, a lot of these cyber attacks start off by social engineering attacks. You get an email or somebody calls you or somebody sends you a message, right, with somehow convincing you that there is something you need to do, which seems very genuine, but helps them steal information about you, right? To the extent more and more sophisticated techniques, including AI-based techniques, can be used to come up with new attack strategies and make the message look more and more convincing. Mm-hmm. This is always a risk, right? So cybersecurity, ChatGPT is a conversational AI, so it's not really going to start attacking computers directly, but by convincing humans of certain facts that may not be fully correct, you could get people to do things that they would normally not do. So that's the space, and a lot of attacks are like that, right? You suddenly a message comes and you click it, and once you click it, everything else, then you get hacked. That's the risk with a lot of these kinds of things.
That's right. So it's like, two sides of the coin, with benefits, with concerns and limitations, which we will have to ultimately adapt to and think of solutions with time. Professor Choi, I'll take one last word from you, because the challenges have been cited in so many words by institutions, and particularly educational institutions across the world, that it's been banned in several educational institutions for the moment as a knee-jerk reaction maybe. But the fact is, this is the future, and the future can't be banned. So what really is the way forward then?
Right. In the short term, it makes sense because there are outages in ChatGPT. Students don't always have equal access to it. Exactly. So you can't have an exam right now where you require students to have ChatGPT because the technology isn't consistently available. In the long term, I think the way that law, for example, is practiced is going to change, and the way that testing has to occur should also change, and the way that teaching occurs should also change. So in the long term, I would imagine ChatGPT or tools like it would be available in the classroom, would be used on exams, and the task of educators and of students is to adapt to the new technology.
Clearly, and we hope that this technology is a responsible one, and it's only used to the benefit of humans in a way that assists us in doing our work. It saves time and it saves a lot of effort on our part as well. That having been said, I'll have to wind up the program. Thank you to all the panelists for joining us on this edition of the Global Debate, sharing your thoughts, your views about ChatGPT with us and our viewers. Absolute pleasure to hear all three of you speak on this very, very pertinent topic. And thank you very much to you viewers as well for your time. I'll see you same time next week. Take good care of yourselves. Keep watching Sansad TV.